Welcome, everyone. You are joining us for an exploration into a career that, well, it spans 64 years, a life lived entirely through the microphone and the camera lens.
It's an almost unimaginable length of time in broadcasting.
It is. Today, we're doing a thorough analysis of the extensive source material we have detailing the professional and personal journey of Lawrence Harvey Zeiger.
The man the world, of course, knew simply as Larry King.
We're going to chart that astonishing trajectory of a true broadcasting legend.
And the scale of his work it's just staggering. Our sources credit him with conducting a huge volume of conversations, often cited as over 50,000 interviews across radio and TV.
50,000.
And he was continuously active from his very first broadcast back in 1957 all the way through to his death in 2021.
That sheer quantity, it demands our attention. How did one person maintain that level of output for so long?
Exactly.
Our material today covers every single stage of his evolution, his chaotic improvisational start on Miami radio.
His rise to national syndication on the mutual broadcasting system.
Then, of course, the quarter-century institution he built at CNN with Larry King Live.
And we'll also get into his surprising and sometimes controversial later career in digital media with Aura TV and RT America.
So our mission today is to go beyond just the biography. We really want to distill the most meaningful insights for you.
We want to specifically address what powered his unique and often criticized interviewing style. We aim to understand the secret to his remarkable endurance.
In a media landscape that was just constantly shifting.
Radically. From late-night AM radio to the birth of 247 cable news, and then finally into global streaming.
So by the end of this analysis, you will have a really comprehensive understanding of the strategies, the successes, and yes, the controversies that defined his unique impact on modern communication.
Okay, so let's start at the beginning.
Let's unpack his origins, because the Larry King persona, it was emphatically not Lawrence Zeiger's original path. He was born Lawrence Harvey Zeiger on November 19th, 1933.
And this was in the Bensonhurst neighborhood of Brooklyn, New York City.
The background here is just so vital.
It really is. His parents, Jenny and Aaron Edward, they were Orthodox Jews who had immigrated to the United States from what was then Soviet Belarus.
Right, arriving in the 1920s and 30s.
Specifically, they came from the Minsk and Pinsk areas, so it was a very working-class immigrant upbringing in a tight-knit community.
And the stability of that early life was just shattered by a truly pivotal event.
A devastating event. When King was only 9 years old, his father died suddenly of a heart attack.
And this wasn't just a personal tragedy, it was a complete economic crisis for the family.
Precisely. The sources we have really paint this as the moment everything changed. His father's death was profoundly disruptive. It forced his mother, Jenny, who was a garment worker, to rely heavily on government assistance.
On welfare programs.
Yes. And King later spoke about the shame and the difficulty of that time. The emotional and financial strain, it severely affected young Lawrence.
So much so that he completely lost interest in his schoolwork.
Right. While attending Lafayette High School in Brooklyn, it absolutely shifted his ambition away from any kind of formal education and toward just finding immediate employment.
And yet, despite the necessity of working right after high school to support his mother, one single unwavering ambition remained.
Broadcasting.
Broadcasting.
Absolutely. The sources confirm he clung to this desire to work in radio, even as he was working menial jobs, like as a delivery driver, just to help the family get by.
But the New York radio market at that time, it was notoriously closed off to newcomers.
Especially without connections or experience. This reality, it really necessitated a move. It pushed him out of the only environment he'd ever known and toward a place where opportunities might be more fluid.
And that difficult search for an opening is what led him to Florida.
A CBS production supervisor, a man named James Sermons, advised him to go south. He suggested Florida was a burgeoning media market, hungry for inexperienced broadcasters.
So in the mid-1950s, Lawrence Zeiger moves to Miami, chasing that elusive radio dream.
And his entry into the industry was anything but smooth. It wasn't about talent or connections at first. It was about sheer persistence.
Right.
Our sources indicate his first job was at a small station, WAHR, which is now WMBM, in Miami Beach, starting in 1957.
But he wasn't hired as on-air talent.
Not at all. He was hired as a janitor and a general errand boy. He was earning a meager $50 a week.
$50 a week for janitorial work in 1957. That really highlights the depth of his commitment.
It does. But then fate intervened. An announcer abruptly quit, and King was just thrown onto the air as a disc jockey.
His first official broadcast was May 1st, 1957. But even as he prepared for that moment, his first major hurdle appeared. It was his name.
And the famous and slightly chaotic story of the name change is pure showbiz improvisation. It's the moment the Larry King identity was born.
That had to be done in minutes.
Literally minutes. The station general manager took one look at the cue card and declared Zeiger to be, and this is the quote, too German, too Jewish, and not show business enough.
The pressure must have been immense. He needed a new surname instantly.
So he glances down at a copy of the Miami Herald that's just lying on the desk, sees an advertisement for King's Wholesale Liquor, and decides on King.
Just like that.
It was a completely arbitrary decision, rooted purely in time constraints, yet it defined his entire life and career forever. And within 2 years, he legally formalized the change to Larry King.
So once that mic was hot, the transition from playing records to actually interviewing people was rapid. And that's where his unique gift really began to shine.
And it started on a mid-morning show for WIOD, broadcast live from a famous spot called Pumpernickel's Restaurant in Miami Beach.
And he had to fill airtime, so he literally just started interviewing whoever walked in the door.
It's the most humble beginning you can imagine for a man who would later interview every living U.S. president. His very first interview subject in that setting was a waiter at the restaurant.
What does that tell you?
It shows us King's fundamental belief that everyone had an interesting story if you just asked the right question. The subject matter didn't matter, the conversation did.
And that willingness to engage with anyone, it paid off very quickly. Just 2 days after interviewing a waiter, he had his first celebrity guest.
The singer Bobby Darin.
Right. Darin walked into Pumpernickel's for a meal, had apparently heard King's local show, and just agreed to talk. That moment cemented his local reputation.
And that local success allowed him to branch out into early television. By May of 1960, he was hosting a show called Miami Undercover on a local station.
More critically, he secured a major mentor.
The comedian Jackie Gleason, who began taping his variety show in Miami Beach starting in 1964.
Our sources really highlight how impactful Gleason was on King's development. King later recalled, I believe in 1996, that Gleason would stay with him late into the night, advising him on set design, on lighting, on overall visual presentation.
Gleason helped shape him into a broadcast professional, not just a radio voice.
However, this successful upward trajectory was violently interrupted in 1971. His career was completely derailed.
He was dismissed from both WIOD radio and WTVJ television following his arrest for grand larceny.
The charges were filed by a former business partner, Louis Wolfson, concerning a $5,000 loan.
Yes, a loan Wolfson had given King for a purported introduction to a powerful figure.
He also lost his weekly column at the Miami Beach Sun. It was a severe public humiliation and a major career setback. For many people, that would have been the end.
It really would have. It speaks volumes about his fundamental resilience that he recovered. The charges were later dropped, but the damage was done.
And yet, the sources confirm, King was eventually rehired by WIOD years later. He even hosted a sports talk show called Sports a la King.
This bounce back demonstrates a ferocious will to survive in broadcasting. It proves that even a major legal scandal couldn't extinguish his drive.
And that incredible resilience, it culminated in national stardom in 1978.
This is the moment King becomes a genuine national fixture. He launched his nightly coast-to-coast radio program on the Mutual Broadcasting System starting January 30th, 1978.
And the work schedule for this show was just punishing.
It was. The program broadcast live 5 nights a week, Monday through Friday, running from midnight until 5:30 a.m. Eastern Time.
We have to emphasize that time slot. It was a 6-hour marathon aimed squarely at the late-night coast-to-coast audience.
The truckers, the nurses, the shift workers, the insomniacs.
That specific time slot is so key to understanding the show's success. That audience was seeking companionship and authentic conversation, not fast-paced entertainment.
And the structure of the Larry King Show on Mutual was just tailor-made for that need.
Absolutely. The first hour was the classic setup, a lengthy, in-depth interview with a specific guest.
This was then followed by 2 hours where listeners could call in and continue that same conversation with the guest. It was like a national rolling press conference.
But the truly revolutionary element, the thing that forged that intense listener connection, began at 3 a.m. Eastern.
That was the start of the Open Phone America segment. And this was extraordinary because King dropped the pretense of a formal interview.
Anyone could talk about anything.
Exactly. Callers were free to discuss any topic they wanted with King. It allowed the show to veer from geopolitical issues to relationship problems to personal anecdotes. It created this intimate, almost confessional space in the dead of night.
And it was only right at the very end of the broadcast that King, who had been listening and facilitating for hours, would finally offer his own political opinions.
By structuring the show that way, he prioritized listening and community building over lecturing. It fostered an intense bond with his late-night audience.
And this structure birthed a phenomenon. The show rapidly developed an intensely loyal nocturnal following who affectionately nicknamed themselves the Kingaholics.
They were united by that shared experience of listening to King facilitate this national open-ended conversation during the quiet hours.
One of the most endearing elements of the radio show, and something that really enhanced that community feel, was the way King recognized and validated his regulars.
He turned regular callers into characters. He gave them persistent nicknames or pseudonyms that made them quasi-celebrities on the airwaves.
The sources list names like the Numbers Guy, who provided statistics for whatever topic was being discussed.
The Chair, the Portland Laugher, the Miami Derelict, and the Scandal Scooper.
These names provided color and a real narrative. You, as the listener, didn't just hear a voice. You recognized the character and knew their perspective.
It made the massive national program feel like a small, highly personalized group of friends gathering to talk late at night.
And the growth of the program is the ultimate metric of its success.
It began modestly with just 28 affiliates across the country. But our sources confirm that this highly personal late-night show grew exponentially, eventually reaching over 500 radio stations nationwide.
It demonstrates a massive, underserved demand for this type of unstructured, genuine, and conversational broadcasting.
Furthermore, King himself infused the show with his personality. Beyond the interviews and the callers, he would occasionally entertain his audience with amusing, often self-deprecating, stories drawn from his childhood or his chaotic early days in Miami.
That authenticity was a powerful tool. It stripped away the formality often associated with national broadcasters and made him feel accessible.
He felt trustworthy. He was a figure of companionship during the most solitary hours of the day.
By 1993, after 15 years of those grueling overnight schedules, King needed to scale back.
He sought to reduce his workload, which led to him transitioning to a shorter daytime version of the program.
His primary fill-in host, Jim Bohannon, took over the demanding late-night time slot.
And King's tenure with the full National Mutual show concluded on May 27, 1994, closing out 16 years on the network. But by this point, he was already firmly entrenched in his next, even bigger endeavor, cable television.
The leap from a massive radio audience to an even larger cable news audience began a decade earlier. Larry King Live premiered on CNN in June 1985.
And what's absolutely incredible is the staggering work ethic required to sustain his initial schedule.
It truly speaks to his stamina. Initially, King maintained this grueling dual career.
He would host the hour-long Larry King Live show on CNN from 9 to 10 p.m. Eastern, then immediately travel to the Mutual radio studios to start his nearly 6-hour live radio show at midnight.
That was relentless, daily commitment. He was utilizing every possible minute to reach audiences across two distinct platforms.
And that kind of saturation solidified his status as a national and soon international figure. The breadth of guests he hosted on CNN was legendary.
We're talking about everyone from prominent political leaders, world figures, and entertainment stars.
But also non-traditional guests that few other news programs would book. The sources specifically mention he interviewed alleged psychics like Sylvia Browne and UFO conspiracy theorists.
This willingness to give airtime to figures outside the conventional mainstream, well, some critics argued it was to the detriment of journalistic credibility.
But it was part of his brand. It suggested he was open to any conversation.
And his accessibility also made him crucial for breaking news cycles. Because of his reputation and his non-confrontational style, he often secured the first or only interview with important figures when major news stories erupted.
Especially those who were trying to control a narrative.
This gave the program immense political weight. We can highlight two major political milestones.
In 1992, Ross Perot, the Texas billionaire, he chose Larry King Live as the platform to announce his independent presidential bid to the world.
That choice validated King's show as a serious force in political campaigning outside the traditional network gatekeepers.
And then the following year, the show hosted a pivotal debate between Vice President Al Gore and Ross Perot over NAFTA, the North American Free Trade Agreement.
That debate became CNN's most watched segment in its history, a record that stood for over 2 decades. Until 2015.
These moments demonstrate that King didn't just host talk. He helped shape political history.
This brings us to the core analytical point of his career, the King method.
His approach was direct but fundamentally non-confrontational. It was built around maximizing comfort and minimizing hostility.
Let's unpack that strategy, because it's the source of both his greatest success and his greatest criticism.
Critics noted that this approach made King extremely attractive to powerful figures, politicians, CEOs, celebrities, who wanted to state their position or defend their actions without enduring aggressive fact-check challenges.
It was often called softball journalism.
That's the strategic trade-off. King prioritized access over accountability. He gave high-profile guests a safe space to explain themselves, which meant he secured interviews others couldn't.
But often at the expense of a tough, probing line of questioning.
King himself championed what he called the ignorance strategy. It sounds counterintuitive for a journalist, but it was key to his persona.
He famously stated that when interviewing authors about their books, he purposely did not read them in advance.
His justification for this was brilliant in its simplicity. He argued that he should not know more than his audience.
By remaining purposefully uninformed, he ensured he would ask the most basic, open-ended questions.
The ones a genuinely curious person watching at home would actually pose. This solidified his role as the audience's proxy.
It's an interview style that focuses on the human element, asking, "Why did you do that?" instead of, "Why did you ignore this fact?"
And that strategy clearly worked, evidenced by the sheer quantifiable scale of his output.
The volume is just mind-boggling. Our sources provide slightly different figures, but they all agree the total is unprecedented.
CNN claimed King conducted more than 30,000 interviews during his 25-year television run alone.
Other sources push his total volume across radio and television to over 50,000 or even 60,000 interviews.
No matter which number you use, it represents an unparalleled career dedicated entirely to sustained live conversation.
And that monumental duration earned formal recognition. Larry King Live was recognized by the Guinness Book of World Records as the longest-running television show hosted by the same person on the same network and in the same time slot.
It was truly an institution of cable news.
After more than 2 decades in that primetime slot, the CNN era neared its conclusion.
King announced on June 29, 2010, that he would be stepping down after 25 years. This announcement came amid significant internal and external speculation that the network was looking to refresh its lineup.
And the inevitable replacement was later confirmed to be Piers Morgan.
The final broadcast of Larry King Live aired on December 16, 2010, marking the conclusion of 6,000 episodes of the program.
The materials capture his concluding words perfectly, demonstrating his classic conversational style, even in farewell.
He chose simplicity over drama. He said, I don't know what to say except to you, my audience, thank you. And instead of goodbye, how about so long?
It was a fitting, humble closure to a colossal chapter.
And while he initially agreed to host occasional CNN specials, that arrangement didn't last long. The sources confirm he officially severed ties with CNN in February 2012.
Which allowed him to focus entirely on his next and perhaps most ambitious career pivot, digital media ownership.
King's move in 2012 proved he was attuned to the shifting media landscape. It demonstrated remarkable adaptability for a man in his late 70s.
In March 2012, just over a year after leaving CNN, he co-founded Aura TV, a production company.
He co-founded it with his wife, Sean Southwick King, and the prominent Mexican business magnate Carlos Slim.
This move wasn't just about hosting. It was about ownership and control of his content on emerging platforms.
This was a genuine embrace of streaming. Aura TV quickly secured a deal with Hulu to exclusively carry his new talk-oriented web series, Larry King Now, which launched in July 2012.
He also hosted a weekly political analysis show called Politicking with Larry King on the same platform.
And he showed immediately that the new platform could still generate national impact. In October 2012, he leveraged Aura TV's digital reach to host the third-party presidential debate.
Featuring candidates like Jill Stein, Rocky Anderson, Virgil Goode, and Gary Johnson. This proved the King brand still commanded enough respect to draw significant political content, even without the CNN banner.
Now, we must address the most controversial part of his later career:
the relationship with global state-backed media.
In May 2013, the Russian government-owned RT America network announced a licensing deal with Aura TV.
So King shows, Larry King Now and Politicking, began airing on RT while still being available on Hulu and Aura.tv.
This partnership immediately drew criticism given RT's role as a platform for Russian state messaging.
When King was publicly criticized in 2014 for this association, he was keen to make a crucial, nuanced distinction.
He strongly argued that he did not work for RT. He clarified that Aura TV, his independent production company, simply licensed his finished programs to the network for a fee.
Essentially just selling distribution rights.
Right. He was absolutely adamant about maintaining editorial independence. He stated publicly that he would never tolerate editorial interference, asserting that if RT were to remove any content, he would immediately cease the arrangement.
His insistence was that he was a neutral interviewer, and his show was simply content for license, independent of the network's ownership or political agenda.
However, the complexities of operating in that environment are significant. The sources highlight later concerns that challenged his claimed distance.
In 2019, ProPublica reported that King had been manipulated into starring in what amounted to a fake interview.
The segment, created by a Russian journalist, contained disinformation targeting the Chinese dissident Guo Wengui.
And this fake interview was then strategically spread by social media accounts associated with the Chinese government.
This incident underscores the massive operational and reputational risks media personalities face when licensing content globally, particularly to state-backed entities.
Regardless of King's personal intent or insistence on editorial independence, his platform was utilized to disseminate targeted political information.
And this complex issue ties directly into our closing analysis on media neutrality and funding structures.
Beyond that, King remained an incredibly active writer throughout his life, paralleling his broadcast career.
He maintained a regular column for the sporting news during the 1980s. He also contributed a column to USA Today for almost 2 decades, a significant run from 1982 until 2001.
This side career ensured his voice and perspective were consumed across print media, in addition to radio and television.
And then there was his fascinating parallel career in entertainment. He had numerous acting and voice roles, almost always playing himself.
Which is a testament to his cultural omnipresence.
It is. He had notable cameos in films like Ghostbusters and television shows like 30 Rock and The People v. O.J. Simpson, American Crime Story.
But perhaps his most memorable contributions were his voice roles.
He voiced Doris, the ugly stepsister, in Shrek 2 and its sequels, which was an amusing, gender-bending choice. And he voiced B. Larry King in the animated feature B-movie.
This diverse portfolio just shows how ingrained his voice and persona were in American pop culture.
In his final years, he also fully embraced digital engagement. He became a very active user on Twitter.
Posting his often quirky thoughts and commenting on a huge variety of subjects, he recognized that the platform fundamentally changed the concept of audience engagement.
It moved from formalized call-ins to direct, immediate connection with the public.
Finally, we should mention his post-CNN commercial endeavors. After 2011, he notably transitioned into the world of infomercials.
He often used his trademark interview style to discuss products, like the Omega XL dietary supplement. He leveraged his decades of broadcast credibility to lend authority to a completely different commercial format.
Okay, let's turn to a part of his life that was marked by perpetual motion and, well, statistical anomaly.
The sources confirm that Larry King was married 8 times to 7 different women. This pattern alone suggests a level of complexity and volatility in his personal life that was truly rare.
Let's walk through the factual chronology, as these relationships were critical components of his life narrative.
He first married his high school sweetheart, Frida Miller, in 1952, but that union was annulled the following year by their parents.
Next, he married Annette Kay in 1961, and they divorced that same year. They had a son, Larry Jr., also born in 1961.
Whom King did not meet or connect with until the son was in his 30s. That's a stark reminder of the fragmented nature of his early relationships.
Then came Aline Akins. The relationship so complex he married her twice.
They married the first time in 1961. King adopted her son Andy in 1962. They divorced in 1963.
But then they remarkably remarried in 1969, had a daughter, Chaya, and then divorced for good in 1962.
In between those 2 marriages to Aline Akins, he married Mary Frances Mickey Sutphin in 1963, divorcing her in 1967.
Following the second split from Aline Akins, he married Sharon Lepore in 1976. They divorced in 1983.
His 6th marriage was to businesswoman Julie Alexander in 1989. This relationship faced immediate physical obstacles as they lived in different cities. They separated in 1990 and divorced in 1992.
His final and longest marriage was to Shawn Southwick, an actress and singer. They married in 1997.
And this demonstrates the intensity of his commitment, as the wedding took place just 3 days before King was scheduled to undergo major heart surgery.
They had 2 sons, Chance, born in 1999, and Cannon, born in 2000.
But despite the longevity, the relationship was turbulent. They filed for divorce twice, once in 2010, in which they reconciled, and again in 2019.
They were estranged and actively going through divorce proceedings at the time of his death in January 2021.
And looking at his financial situation, despite his enormous success, he was not immune to major financial catastrophe.
The sources confirm King lost a staggering $2.8 million to the infamous Bernie Madoff Ponzi scheme. That must have been a devastating blow.
And on a more positive note, he actively defended his brand. He successfully sued a Shark Tank contestant, Nate Holzapfel, for editing a clip to falsely imply he'd been interviewed on Larry King Now.
King won a significant $250,000 default judgment, showing he fiercely protected his intellectual property and image.
No, we must pause to acknowledge the immense personal tragedy King suffered just months before his own death.
A loss that must have been emotionally crushing.
It was a truly devastating period. In August 2020, King's children with Aline Akins, Andy and Chaya died within weeks of each other.
Andy, who was 65, died suddenly of a heart attack, and Chaya, who was 51, died following a battle with lung cancer.
The loss of two children so close together, especially following decades of health struggles himself, must have been an immeasurable weight on him in his final months. We just have to acknowledge the profound pain that kind of dual loss entails.
And that profound grief was compounded by legal complexities following his death. His estranged wife, Shawn Southwick, contested his 2019 handwritten will.
The 2019 will explicitly left his estate valued by the courts at about $2 million, not including other assets and trusts, to his 5 surviving children, essentially excluding Shawn.
She alleged that the 2019 will was written under undue influence, contradicting a 2015 will that had named her executor.
This dispute dragged on for years, though a settlement was ultimately reached in 2024, finalizing the division of his estate.
King truly fought many battles throughout his career, but none were as frequent or as serious as his health struggles.
The first major public cardiac event occurred on February 24, 1987. He suffered a massive heart attack, which required emergency quintuple bypass surgery.
That event was a monumental turning point that forced an immediate lifestyle change.
King, a heavy smoker who routinely smoked 3 packs a day, quit his habit entirely after the surgery. He also channeled the experience into 2 books about living with heart disease. He used his trauma to advocate for awareness.
But the health issues persisted into his later years. In 2017, doctors discovered a malignant tumor in his lung, likely a lasting consequence of his earlier heavy smoking.
Fortunately, it was successfully removed with surgery, but 2019 proved to be an incredibly challenging year.
In April, he underwent a scheduled angioplasty and had stents inserted. Later that year, he revealed a much more serious event had occurred in March.
He had suffered a stroke and was in a coma for weeks. The cumulative effect of these issues was immense.
And the psychological toll following the stroke was perhaps the most revealing detail of his final years.
King publicly admitted that the difficulty of recovery and his diminished physical capacity led him to contemplate suicide. He told a Los Angeles television station, "I thought I was just going to bite the bullet. I didn't want to live this way."
It provides a stark, honest look at the depths of despair he faced, contrasting sharply with his public persona.
His final health battle began in January 2021 when he was hospitalized with a severe COVID-19 infection. He died shortly thereafter, on January 23, 2021, at age 87.
And while the infection was the immediate cause of his hospitalization, the official cause of death was listed as sepsis due to his body's inability to fight it given his long history of prior serious health issues.
To complete the picture of his personal convictions, we should briefly touch on his religious identity, which was, like much of his life, nuanced and evolving.
That's accurate. He initially described himself as a Jewish agnostic in 2005.
Reflecting uncertainty about the existence of God while maintaining a strong cultural and ethnic link to Judaism. By 2015, he publicly stated he was fully atheist.
However, he clarified his cultural pride in a 2017 interview with the Jerusalem Post, stating, "I love being Jewish, am proud of my Jewishness, and I love Israel."
So his identity remained rooted in his heritage, regardless of his theological stance.
And finally, we have to mention his lifelong passion for sports, which often manifested in his work.
He was a devoted fan of the Brooklyn, and later, the Los Angeles Dodgers. He was frequently seen sitting behind home plate at their games.
He even tried to turn his passion into a business venture. In 1990, he was an active part of an investment group that attempted to bring a Major League Baseball expansion franchise to Buffalo, New York.
Okay, let's look at the immense professional legacy King left behind. The list of awards and recognitions is extensive.
And it reflects the fact that he was successful across multiple, dramatically different media platforms.
He received 2 highly prestigious Peabody Awards for excellence in broadcasting, one for his radio program in 1982 and a second for his CNN television coverage in 1992.
He also received an Emmy Award and, notably, 10 Cableese Awards for Best Interviewer and Best Talk Show Series.
Which were crucial measures of quality in the early, highly competitive era of cable television.
He was recognized by his peers in the industry long before his retirement. He was inducted into the Radio Hall of Fame in 1989 and the NE Broadcasters Hall of Fame in 1992.
Securing his status as a legendary figure in both mediums.
And in 2002, the industry publication Talkers magazine offered a definitive professional judgment.
They named him the fourth greatest radio talk show host of all time, and perhaps most tellingly, declared him the top television talk show host of all time.
The list of honors rounds out with his star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame in 1997 and a Lifetime Achievement Award at the News and Documentary Emmys in 2011.
The totality of these awards confirms a career that was impactful, enduring, and genre-defining.
Reflecting on the essence of King's six-decade career, we can synthesize two central insights that apply not just to broadcasting history, but to modern communication itself.
The first is his unparalleled adaptability and longevity.
He successfully mastered and transitioned between three radically different media environments: the intimate world of AM radio, the high-stakes landscape of global cable news, and finally, the entrepreneurial world of digital streaming.
And he maintained that remarkably consistent, simple, and unique interview persona throughout every one of those seismic shifts.
The second key insight ties directly into what you, the listener, can apply to your own communication efforts.
King's method, the non-confrontational, open-ended style, often criticized as soft, proved that genuine curiosity, expressed through the most basic, simple questions, can often elicit a more candid, revealing, and honest response than a hostile interrogation.
In a world where complexity and confrontation often dominate media, King showed that humility, or even feigned ignorance, could be the most powerful tool for gaining knowledge.
He truly was the perpetual student, always asking why, as a proxy for the viewing audience.
And that brings us to a final thought for you to consider.
Larry King's late-life business dealings, particularly his work co-founding Aura TV, and his decision to license his shows to the Russian government-owned RT America network, highlight the continuously evolving financial structures and global political complexities faced by media personalities today.
This situation encourages us to consider a fundamental question.
How does the nature of media funding potentially impact the perception of neutrality, even for an interviewer who insists, as King did, on maintaining complete editorial independence?
It is a worthwhile question to mull over as you encounter new sources of information in this increasingly globalized media environment.
That is a critical point, and the source material gives us the comprehensive picture of how a legendary career concluded against the complex backdrop of modern media economics and geopolitical reality.
Thanks for listening.